Welcome back to Ironsworn, Rime of the Frostmaiden. This is episode 6. Before we do our recap, I just want to talk about a general principle about GMing called the law of conservation of NPCs. And the basic principle is that when you have an NPC, when you're thinking about creating an NPC, can you use a character that you've already created? This will, first of all, reduce your burden as a GM, and also it'll give more opportunities for the PCs to interact with the same NPCs again and again and form more of a relationship with those NPCs. So in the Termalaine adventure, A Beautiful Mine, the head of the kobolds at the end of the mine is possessed by a ghost, and this ghost doesn't have any other connection to the larger plot or storyline. So Sly Flourish's suggestion, which I have taken here, is to use another NPC from elsewhere in Rime of the Frostmaiden as the ghost that is possessing Trax, the kobold leader. So that's the principle of conservation of NPCs, is when you can just reuse another NPC that's elsewhere in the adventure. To recap, when we left Karl, he was descending the mine outside of Termalaine in an attempt to get more information about where his sister may have gone. So he traveled from Lonelywood to Termalaine, hearing that from half his best friend that Trax went towards Termalaine. When he arrived, he heard that a couple of girls from Lonelywood had gone up to the mine. When he got to the mine, he saw evidence of a lot of small reptilian tracks and some giant rats. He didn't see any evidence, though, of his sister Bridget or her friend Tessa. Nonetheless, he heard that there were monsters in the mine. He thought, God, what if my sister went into the mine for some reason and these monsters attacked her and she's in trouble? So he went to the mine, has cruised around, and now has taken the bucket down to the second level. Pulling up in the Augur, our virtual tabletop here, we can see the gem mine map and the first level on the left. And now he has descended to the second level, and the bucket arrives at area M7. This is the bucket lift landing. The mechanism creaks as the bucket lift descends to the floor of a small cave where two dusty tunnels lead in opposite directions. Karl's found a lantern that wasn't broken on the first level, so he's using the lantern to illuminate. He had to put his bow away because he needs a hand to hold the lantern, but he's got his axe. And he's looking left, he's looking right. Which way should we go? I think he's going to go north just to scope out that area. He hears the waterfall coming from the north, so he thinks maybe that's connected to the large shaft that goes up and down this mine. A hole in the west side of this chamber opens into the central shaft, letting in the sound of the waterfall, which he was following. The floor in the north end of the cave is 5 feet higher than in the south end, with a rocky ridge separating them and a slope on either side leading to the top of the ridge. The walls above the ridge glisten with gem deposits. So he's looking around and sees these gem deposits. He doesn't immediately see a monster, but a monster descends upon him. This is the lair of a terrible monster called a Grell. They're basically brains with beaks in classic D&D monster creation, and then have these tentacles that drape down and begin attacking Karl. So Karl is going to begin the fight with the Grell. This is going to be an enter the fray. He got ambushed on this one, had no idea this monster was levitating above him as these tentacles reach down. So he is going to be ambushed, which is wits, and we need to set this combat up. The Grell is one of the horrors of the Underdark that's taken over the mine here, along with the kobolds. But the kobolds might be able to be reasoned with. This Grell is just a monster, just wants to eat people. All right, so on a weak hit on Enter the Fray, I'm going to choose to take initiative because my momentum is already pretty good. So he is surprised by the monster, these tentacles lashing down at him, but he steels himself. He puts the lantern down, so he has two hands to hold his axe, maybe to wield his bow if he needs to be able to shoot the thing in a little bit, but he has initiative, so he is going to strike with his axe, and that is going to give us a weak hit. On a weak hit, inflict your harm and lose initiative. So he hacks with the axe. lops off a couple of the tentacles. The Grell rears back and then comes down to chomp on him with its beak. Karl wheels back with the axe, hacks into this brain mass of this levitating thing with his axe, and he is going to take the opportunity to inflict one harm. And he just got a strong hit, which is great. So he's going to go ahead and try to end the fight. This is super short fight. Karl got pretty lucky on a couple of these hits. Let's see how he does. End the fight, strong hit. He started off hacking off a couple of the tentacles, and then the Grell came down to bite him with its beak. He hacked into the Grell with his axe, and brain CSF fluid goes all over the place. The Grell twitches and flops down, its tentacles writhing and finally falling still, pulls his axe back out, absolutely freaked out, looking around like, what just happened to me? What was that? He's never seen anything like this in the forests around Lonely Wood. But fortunately, the axe worked. He's looking around. He doesn't spot any other horrors, which is good for him. I'm going to mark progress on clearing the mine because that's some of the monsters that are down here, and he just took it out. But looking around, he doesn't see any evidence of anything else here. He doesn't see any evidence of any tracks. Certainly doesn't see his sister here. He's worried, he's looked like, did this monster get her? He doesn't see any evidence of any bodies here. So I don't know, maybe the monster could levitate. Maybe it took its captive somewhere else. He'll have to keep exploring the mine. So he goes back to where the bucket came down at area M7 and then progresses onwards, picking up his lantern that he placed down and keeping a close eye out. He enters this tunnel. A table and chairs are set up in this area to create a space for the miners to take breaks. On top of the table, 2 kobolds are poking a giant rat with their javelins to make sure it's dead. The kobolds screech loudly as they notice you. So it's 2 kobolds poking a rat. So this is going to be another fight. Karl just got out of a fight, but this is what he knew was going to happen. So this is going to be an enter the fray. Let's see, there's two of these kobolds, but I'm thinking that they're not particularly tough guys. There's only 2 of them, and they are probably going to flee when either of them really takes injury. So I'm going to keep them as a troublesome foe, even though there's 2 of them. Facing off against our foe, this is going to be Heart. Not great for Karl. That's a miss. That's not terribly surprising, and I'm not going to worry about burning momentum. Combat begins with you at a disadvantage. Your foe has initiative and pay the price. A new danger or foe is revealed. Well, there are a bunch of other kobolds elsewhere in this cavern, and I think they come running. So he had these 2 kobolds initially. He thought, okay, fine, there are these 2 little lizard guys. He didn't even want to fight. He was just cruising around, and these 2 kobolds jump at him. And I think there's another kobold that's under the table that was cowering under there, wasn't sure, but he sees his compatriots leap up to attack, and it joins the fight as well. So that's going to bump the fight up to a dangerous fight now with these 3 kobolds bearing down on him. And they are going to try to get the advantage of him and cut into him. Karl reels back, hacks out with his axe, and harms one of the kobolds, but then pay the price. Oh, you're separated from something or someone. So I think the price that Karl pays here, these 3 kobolds swarm him. He's hacking with his axe. He didn't have time to put down his lantern, so I think he drops the lantern and it goes out. So he is now in pitch black. These kobolds can see, but Karl cannot, which is going to potentially pose a problem for him. But the kobolds roll in, trying to hurt him. He is going to reel back and try hacking away, and misses, not surprising at all. He is going to take some damage there. Roll his iron after suffering that injury. Ooh, good. Strong hit. So he endures that harm and kind of toughens his resolve. He can't see them, but he can hear these things cruising around. So he is going to try to injure them as they move in and hack at him. That's another weak hit. So they're carving away, hitting him. I think that this is going to take from his spirit. He's alarmed at these kobolds in the dark. He's worried, so he's going to take a hit to his spirit and suffer from that. Ooh, which is a miss on Endure Stress. You also suffer -1 momentum. Okay, he's not at 0 spirit yet, but he's certainly getting there. I think this is more stress than Karl was prepared for. Certainly that thing with tentacles, he is surprised at how quickly he was able to defeat that thing. But these kobolds just too much trouble for him. They're swarming around. I don't know if he can do anything at this point. You know, he doesn't have time to pick up his lantern and relight it or anything. So he's just lashing out with his axe, just trying to clip these things wherever he possibly can. That is another weak hit on a clash. So he's definitely hitting him. He's hurting him, which is great. And he is going to, I think he's going to try to turn the tide at this point so that he can try to end the fight. He's definitely hurt them a number of times on a strong hit. These kobolds, 2 of them are laid out. The last one flees down the tunnel. Karl is left quite injured, stressed out by being left in the dark here. You know, these kobolds just attacked him without provocation. So he's taking a few deep breaths and he's kind of scrambling around on the floor, trying to find his lantern, finally finds it, gets it relit. So defeated those kobolds, which I'm going to mark progress on clearing the mine of monsters because those are some monsters and they are not around anymore. So he's got his lantern relit, which is good. He's got his axe ready. I think that he's looking at himself. He's feeling pretty hurt. I think he is going to take a moment here and try to bind his wounds, but I think he's going to try to secure an advantage first. I think that his advantage is he's going to check out the bodies of the kobolds that he did manage to drop, maybe tear some strips off of their clothing that he can use for bandages. So he's going to try to secure an advantage here. That is a strong hit. Excellent. So he's going to get 2 momentum and he's going to get a +1 to his next roll, which is healing. So now he's going to try to patch himself up at least a little bit. Also a strong hit. Fantastic. He really needed that. Take up to +2 health. Whew. Good thing. Okay. So he using his makeshift bandages that he tore off of these kobolds, he's able to bind himself, stop the blood at least from flowing right now, and kind of steel himself to go further down into the mine. So he progresses out of this rest area and goes deeper down because that's the only place to go. Going down to the 3rd level of the mine, he comes to an area where there's this huge shaft projecting down the whole length of the mine. The tunnel's downward slope ends where it opens into the central shaft. Wooden walkway extends from this opening and then runs westward to another tunnel in the rock. In front of you, a large bucket, like the one you saw earlier, dangles from a taut rope that stretches southward across the shaft and is connected to another platform 15 feet away. So there's this walkway and then there's a bucket that spans this bottomless pit, basically, which does not seem like where Karl wants to go. Definitely reluctant to go across that bucket. So he's going to just go to the tunnels to the right. Lurking in this dusty tunnel are 3 skittish kobolds. One of them carries a threadbare satchel and wears a fake pair of dragon wings made of thin wood and tattered white cloth. This kobold immediately raises its hands in surrender, saying in common, "We mean you no harm. Please don't harm us." Well, that's a little surprising given the other kobolds that just attacked him. But yeah, he would much rather parley with these guys than to throw down and fight, especially given he's hurt and, you know, he's not sure that these are necessarily monsters. The Grell was definitely a monster. These guys, they're at least intelligent, and maybe he can reason with them. So this is Trax, and Trax is possessed by a ghost. I decided instead of as written the ghost, I'm going to use a ghost, Nas Lantamir, who shows up later in the Rime of the Frostmaiden adventure. Nas is a member of the Arcane Brotherhood, which ties in with the rest of the module, which we'll see in the future. So Trax, as possessed by Nas, has been leading the kobolds and got them to this place that they, you know, were going to have a little bit of safety potentially. And the miners got scared and ran. So I don't think that there's any bad blood really here between the kobolds and the miners. Nobody's died anyways. Trax says, "The everlasting winter has made the wilderness unsafe for my kind, and the preternatural cold dulls our wits. Please, We only want a place to stay so we can keep out of this horrible weather. We can work, and we won't cause trouble. Termalaine would be richer for having us. So Karl hears this speech, and he's like, yeah, that sounds great. If you all want to come with me, I can escort you and kind of speak for you to the people. Trax says, there's some sort of horrible horror in one of the tunnels. It got some of our kobolds. Karl nods, says, yes, it was floating and had tentacles. I killed it. Trax says, oh, you killed it. Oh, well, we would love to come back with you then, if you destroyed the monsters. Karl nods, says, what's across the bucket? What's across the tunnel if you take the bucket? Trax shakes their head. Oh, none of us have gone over there. Karl nods, like, have you seen any girls coming down here, two teenage girls together? Trax looks kind of confused, looks at the other two kobolds, shakes their head. No, we haven't seen anybody come here since we took the mine over. Karl nods, like, all right, well, they might be in those two areas. You head out to the head of the mine, and I'm going to check those out, and I'll come back and escort you to Termalaine and explain the whole situation to the townsfolk. Trax nods gratefully, and Karl heads back to this endless, bottomless tunnel and has to take the bucket across. Okay, as written, there's no like dexterity saving throw or anything that you have to make taking this bucket, so it's relatively safe as long as you don't get up to any shenanigans. So he crosses to the other side of this endless pit to go explore these caverns, again, just to make sure that Bridget and Tessa aren't somewhere down here, or that horrible tentacled monster took them somewhere. He enters the cave immediately to the south, and there is a fossilized skull partially jutting out of the east wall of the small cave, 5 feet off the ground. The skull has larger than normal eye sockets, a curious ridge between the eyes, nothing that would pass for a nose, and 4 small holes where one would expect to see teeth. That's weird. I don't think Karl has any idea what this thing is, but he does notice a little glimmering gem that is within this skull. So I think he approaches it, kind of taps on it, the skull disintegrates, and there's a little glittering gem revealed in there. It's a multifaceted, purple in color, kind of has maybe a little bit of a glow to it. Karl doesn't know what this is, but he's going to go ahead and grab it. It seems valuable. And on a meta level, this is helpful because it's going to connect him to at least one other adventure later on in the game. So that'll be valuable for him to have. Well, there's one other tunnel for Karl to explore. So he pockets this gem that he found and goes around the corner. This is a geode area. Sparkling geodes greet you as you enter this cavern. The gems are partially exposed in places, sticking out from the walls like glass shards. The floor rises near the eastern wall, leaving a natural ridge with stone ramps leading upwards on either end. There's nothing particularly worthwhile here, so he goes back out, takes the bucket across the chasm, goes up to the entrance of the mine, and the Trax and the other kobolds are there. He takes the sign that Trax had made that said kobolds only, keep out, gives it to Trax, and he escorts them down back to Termalaine, leaving the mine. Didn't get anything useful about his sister. He has no idea what his sister was doing up here. Or does he? Maybe Trax knows something, but they're not willing to share that information at the outset. So I think on the way back, he's going to try to do a little compel here with Trax. I think he's not above... he's realizing that these kobolds are relatively cowardly, so I think that he's not above throwing in some vague threats to them, not to scare them. I think Karl's not a mean guy, but I think he's like, I gotta find out if they know anything. So he's going to try to intimidate them. That is a strong hit on a compel. Take a +1 momentum. I don't mind if I do. They will tell him what they know. So Trax, who previously, kind of had their story and was sticking to it, Trax is getting a little bit nervous here with Karl, kind of trying to antagonize him, and says, "Oh, okay. They told me not to tell, but I did see there was 2 girls, and they came to the mine entrance, and they met another woman. She was dressed in this snowy white cloak, had wild hair and furs all on her. And I didn't hear what they said. They just had a bit of a conversation, and then the two girls went off, and that woman spotted me and said, if you say anything, I'll come back for you. And I was worried. I was scared, so I ran. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. So this is useful. This is good. So Karl knows that his sister was having a conversation with this woman in a white cloak and kind of crazy hair. He gets some more details from tracks about what she looks like. So I think Karl's going to go ahead and mark a little bit of progress on his find sister quest here, getting that bit of information. He cleared the mine of monsters, and he's now escorting the kobolds back. So I think he's going to mark progress on that as well. He gets them back to the town, and he is going to try to fulfill his vow for clearing the mine of monsters. So he gets back to town. He goes and finds Speaker Matthew and explains the situation, shows them tracks, says that they say they'll be good workers. Again, there's no bloodshed been shed here. The miners were just freaked out and cowardly. Karl also says that he did kill this monstrosity with tentacles, and its body is still there, so please go check it out. Matthew kind of nods and is a little bit suspicious, and he says he's going to go explore the mine himself. So the speaker heads up to the mine. Karl kind of shows the kobolds around, tries to introduce them to people at the Blue Clam, the Dockside Tavern. I think they're probably a little bit suspicious, so I think he's going to do a little compel here. Not Karl's strong suit, but he's got to try to do something, I think, to help out these kobolds. Weak hit. All right, so he's trying to get people to accept these kobolds, and they're all a little bit dodgy. They ask him to share a tale about the mine, and so Karl is not really in the limelight kind of guy. He's spent most of his life just as a forester, and so he's very reluctant, but is finally kind of forced to tell everyone the story of his delve into the gemstone mine. And a little bit while later, Speaker Matthew comes back and says, yep, it looks like the mine is cleared. So let's see if we can get a hit. Fantastic. So the quest is complete, and this was a dangerous quest, so that's going to mark 2 experience for Karl, and we're going to mark that as complete. And the townsfolk are very appreciative, very generous, very excited that the monsters are cleared out. They take in the kobolds. The kobolds end up being really good workers. Now, Nas Lantimir, who is possessed tracks, Nas has a different agenda. Nas is wanting to get to Ithrin, the Netherese city under the ice that's at the end of the adventure. So Nas is not going to be cleaning the inn or anything like that. Nas is kind of scheming the whole time, like, how can I get to that objective? Because they're a ghost. That's like what their obsession is. So I think that we'll see Nas return in the future. But for right now, I think Nas, she's kind of keeping a little bit of a low profile, just kind of acting like a kobold. But I think soon she's going to break out and head off towards where she thinks Ithrin is, and where she can get access to that Netherese city and pursue her ghostly mission. So now that Karl is welcomed into the town, he's going to try to forge a bond with Termalaine. So yeah, let's just do it. That is a miss, but I could burn my momentum, and I think I'm going to do that. It's still a weak hit, so that's okay. I'll take the bond. All right, so he did forge that bond, but they did ask something in return. There's another little hook here in Termalaine at the east side, which is the inn in town. So I think that the folks are going to, be appreciative and say, okay, yeah. And I think they're also going to steer Karl in the direction of the east side to talk to the proprietress there, who is Marta Peskrick. And she has a little bit of a sad tale to share. And I don't know that there's any expectation that he's going to do anything about this, because I don't know if there's anything to be done. But I think probably the locals are just like, go talk to Marta and hear her story. So Karl heads off to the east side. So I think that we're going to wrap it up there. And next time, Karl is going to talk to Marta at the east side, see what she has to say. And then he doesn't have any leads right now for where Bridget and Tessa are. I don't know. Maybe Marta knows. Maybe they stayed at the inn. That would be kind of best case scenario. So we'll find out what happens. Thanks for watching.